Right, Kathleen. I suppose we'll start off by just asking you, who were your grandparents and where did they come from?
My mother's father, Michael Kiley, well, they lived in Fenner, but he was originally from Stradbally. So he was. And my grandmother, she was from Dunhill. She was a Goyrie from Dunhill. And they were a very musical family. But when they married, they lived in Fenner. And they brought up their family in Fenner. They had a family of They had a family of trying to think now, 2 girls and 2 boys, I think it was. Yeah. But my grandfather, he was rent collector, or insurance, I beg your pardon, insurance collector. That's what he was. And my grandmother was a great seamstress. So.
And your own parents then?
My own parents, my mum was Kathleen Keane, or Catherine, of Fenner, and she worked in the model bakeries, which were down the main street in Tramore. She was a shop assistant there. And my father was the manager of Lodge's, Jack Lodge's shop. He was great at the figures. And when we were all born then, there were 6 of us in it. He suddenly thought that, well, if I can make money for Jack Lodge, I can make it for my own family. So he left Lodge's and he started up his own bakery with the help of some friends who backed him financially in the bank, because my father literally had nothing other than he wanted to have a better life for his family. You know. And that was in, I think it was 1948, he started up the bakery. And the bakery was in Summerhill, and they had a little shop. They bought a small little house and a little shop, and my mother used to run the shop, and my father built, with the help of some of his neighbours, built a bakery at the back of it and started up there.
Okay.
You know, and we all had to work in the bakery. By work, I never made anything in the bakery other than every Saturday, I was given a brush and told to sweep the bakery. That's all I did in it, you know.
And did your brothers, did they?
They were on the vans. 3 brothers, yeah. Well, John was in the shop, and my brother Tom and David, they were on 2 bread vans, and they went all over the county. Well, as in Dunmore East, Dunhill, Fenner, all that area, delivering bread to the houses. At that time, there was very few people had transport, cars like, and you delivered the bread to the houses, you know. And some years later then, my father bought a shop down the main street. It had been a post office, Brennan's, and Brennan's were after buying a premises across from it. So my father bought the shop, and the house we were all reared in Summerhill was given to my eldest brother David when he got married, and the rest of the family moved down to the main street. And it was from the main street that I got married. That's where I got married from. And I met my husband, Sean Keane from Galway. I met him in the dance hall in Tramore, And at the time, I used to always say to my mother that I'd never meet my husband in the dance hall. Well, I've eaten my words since. But thank God, since then, I was the lucky woman that I met Sean. But Sean was a native of Galway.
Sean was a guard here in Tramore, was he?
Yes, he was actually a guard in Waterford when I met him. And he had been in Tramore the previous year, just for the summer season. And he had to go back into Waterford then. But he came out the following year, moved into plainclothes. He's a detective in Tramore. And he was there until he retired some years later.
And the house you have here, what did you move here after you married?
We lived in Waterford for 4 years when we married first, because Sean used to be in Waterford a lot. And when he came to Waterford first, he came to Ferrybank. That's when I actually met him. And then, as I say, after the 4 years, we moved to Tramore, where we're built now. And we got this plot from an uncle of mine. It was a cottage plot. And at that time, we were always known that you live in the last house before you go into the country, which we were, the last house. But not today. There's a whole town built around us. But thank God for the moves we made. We never regretted any of them.
That was great.
You know.
And going back to the bakery, was there many employed at the bakery?
There would have been... Well, my uncle was the confectioner. And then there would have been, as bakers, there was a Michael Walsh, Jimmy Keown, Michael Curran. There was different men from Waterford from time to time. And what's the lad you know?
Paddy Byrne.
Paddy Byrne, yes. And they were all very loyal to my dad, so they were. Until they all, like my dad, I suppose, got too old and just had to retire, you know.
And when your dad retired, did somebody else take over the bakery?
Well, he used to always say, I will never retire. And the Lord made him retire, and he was only 59 at the time. But my brothers then, David, took over the bakery, and my brother Tom, he was involved in it big time as well, you know, and John was involved in it as well.
And what kind of, I suppose, products did they make there?
Well, as I said, my uncle Johnny, he was the confectioner, but Blaise, of course, was a big thing. The Blaise of Waterford is famous, as you know, but he used to make what was always known as turnovers, or grinders, as some people used to call them, and he used to make basket pans, Sally Lunns, all different types of, you name it, they made it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And your granduncle Johnny, I know that you done a bit of blackguarding with him when he was going to Lourdes one time.
Oh, sure, he was a character, but he was all excited about going to Lourdes. And I suppose I was a bit of a rogue myself, but the day he went to Lourdes, he had an umbrella with him, and he opened up the umbrella in on the quay, and I was after putting a heap of rice in the umbrella, and he got showered down with rice. That was a start. But then when he went to Lourdes, the man that he was sharing the bedroom with told his sister Joel that we might have been in Lourdes, but it wasn't all prayers, because I was after sewing the right leg of his pyjamas. I assumed that he'd put his left leg in first, which he did. And very well to get into the pyjamas, the right leg, needless to say. And it wasn't, God bless you, came out of him. And all his friend could hear him saying, I know the bitch is after doing that. Oh, but did I say, the laughs we had, anything for a laugh, mean no harm to anybody, but it was just a bit of fun. But that was my uncle. But I used to always say that, I'll never forget my trip to Lourdes, he said, and it wasn't all about praying.
You had another relation and worked in the waterworks, hadn't you?
My grandfather O'Connor, David O'Connor, he was working in the waterworks, and I remember hearing at one stage, back those times, he wasn't educated, but he had a brilliant brain for machinery. And his employers, where they lived in Dungarvan, and they used to actually come down and bring him up to Dungarvan because some of their machinery would have packed in and they didn't know what to do. And he always went up with them and kept at that machinery until he got it going. And he wasn't, as I say, an educated man, but he had the brain. He was great at the machinery. He was noted for that.
And that was based out in Knockanduff, was it?
No, just down the waterworks, just down from us here.
Okay.
That's where he worked. And his son, Paddy O'Connor, he took over from the grandfather as well. And then they built the place off out in beyond Fenner. Do you know where the lake is up there? Up there. But that was them. But Paddy died a young man. All of my dad's family, the three boys, they died young. My father was 59. Paddy was 56. And my uncle John, that was in the bakery, he never married. But he didn't die until he was 65. He always claimed married life killed the other two. That was his excuse for not marrying. But I think...
And you were telling me then from here there was what they call a mass path.
Yes, from just outside our gateway here, there was a bad bend on that road, and all the land above it was belonging to Parkinson's. And there was always, on the bend, there was a stile for a mass path. The people from Knockanduff, they used to come down to mass, as you know, few of them had cars in those days, and they used to come down to mass across the fields, Parkinson's fields, and there was a mass path down the whole way, and they used to come out just up from us here. They had the stile and down to mass from there. But that was, you know, if they didn't come in a trap, they were able to walk down the mass path.
But there was no houses between here and Knockanduff at the time?
Parkinson's. That was the only one. When we came out here first, Parkinson's, which was just down a quarter of a mile down the road, that was the next house. There was no other houses between us. But that has changed big time.
And
yeah.
Going back to some of the other businesses you might have remembered that were in Tramore at the time.
Well, as I say, lodges were in it. And of course, Gerard Stubb, the shoemaker, he was fantastic, so he was. He was a historian himself. He was great, the knowledge that he had. But then we had sticky backs. They had a shop down near the beach, and they used to sell little gifts, but they were known as sticky backs. And how that came about is they used to sell, I think they used to make, they had, I think it was apples, and put sticky stuff around it. And that's where they got the name Sticky Back. You know, Powers were their name. But then you had, as I said, the Paddy Mullins. That was where Sticky Backs were originally. You had Dorothy's shop down the main street. I suppose more or less that was it at the time.
The bakery was next to Peter Street. Does that mean that you, as kids, you would have played in Peter Street?
We played in Peter Street, and I used to play with different girls around. Anne Esmond, as she was at the time, Anne Bowen. And our entertainment was we'd have a skipping rope, and all of Peter Street we'd come down and we'd all have the skipping rope, and we'd get a wheel off a bicycle, and we'd have a stick, and we'd have racing up and down, racing to see who'd be able to go the furthest with the wheel without it falling. But that was our entertainment, and we were happy at it. We were easily able to entertain ourselves between the skipping rope. And then, if we were playing hide and go seek, we'd hide in the cemetery, in under the headstones. That was our playground. And then, oh yes, in the bakery, my father used to, when the knives would go bad in the bakery, he used to go across to the cemetery. There was a certain tombstone in the cemetery, and he was able to edge the knives out of the bakery on this stone. And that stone is still down there today. But that's where he used to edge the knives. So.
And who would have been living in Peter Street at that time?
The Carberrys, they were in the first one. And Bowen, that's Anne Esmond, and the Powers, which they're still there, the family, they're still there. But going up to Peter Street then, there was the Harneys. Harney was the name. He used to look after the cemetery. And if any of us as kids were seen up in St. Patrick's Cemetery, his house backed onto it, and he'd give a big rap at the window, and we were told as kids to clear out of there. Oh yeah. We would only go up there if we knew he was gone downtown. But then you had the Corcorans. Who else were up there? I'm trying to think. Some of them are still up there. Some of the families are in it. And the Rooney butler, a well-known character, he was up there. And he lived with his father. And he was a great golfer, of course, themselves. They used to teach above the golf links, and they were excellent. You know, but the Millses, they were in Peter Street. There was more families in it then. They went off to England. Their family, you know, they all went to England, so they did.
Would many have emigrated at the time?
Yes, you see, the work wasn't around here. A lot of people went to England and they never came back out of it. Rare their families. Some of them came back, like, just come back on holidays. And some of them came back, I suppose, to win their days here. But most of them didn't come back. They had a good life in England at that time.
And where did you go to school?
The Sisters of Charity, Star of the Sea. I went there, and personally I didn't like school because I wasn't very good at the Irish. I had trouble with the Irish, and when I was 16, my father said, right, he said, I wasn't asked what I want to do. I was to go down to the shop in the main street, and that's where I lived and worked up to the time I got married.
Okay.
You know.
And was a lot of the girls you went to school with, would a good portion of them have emigrated at the time?
a good few of them did. Yeah, a good few of them did, but some of them didn't. And like everything, you lose touch with people, but a lot of them went to England, so they did. But they came.
You mentioned the Rooney there a while ago. Do you remember any other characters around Tramore?
Well, of course, the famous Limerick Bill. And then there was Moll Galvin. There's some of her family still here. Who else? The Furlongs, they lived here as well. But again, some of them went to England, and more of them went to Dublin, and their families married in Dublin. There's they have a son back here. He was in Australia for years. He's back in living in Tramore after being in Australia for years, a good few years.
And the bakery, when did the bakery cease operating?
Well, now, it started in 1948, and I haven't. My late sister now, she was great with dates, but I'm not sure. It would have been, I'd say it's been in it for a good 50 years.
And why did it stop? Why?
Well, I suppose it's like this, all small bakeries. They've been blown out with all the big bakeries, so they had to call it a day.
And yet, there's a bakery, as you see, is opened in Tramore again recently.
Yes, yeah. This is it.
Is it good to see that things are coming back?
Ah, yeah. Well, this is it, but not for the O'Connors. We're all gone beyond that now. No, definitely not. My brother Tom, he did open a bakery in Waterford then. He was known as Hot Tom, but he retired from that business as well. So.
And his son Cathal, and he.
Cathal, his son Cathal started a bakery. It was just confectionery mostly in Dungarvan, and he ran that himself for a good few years. But again, like everything, he was married to a girl from France. She worked with him, but he's moved his family back to France about 3 years ago, and that's where his son is now.
And going back to saying you had the bread vans on the go, would you as children have been on? Would you go on the van for spins around the country?
Well, I would. As a kid, I would have gone off with some of the van men, just to something to do. Possibly to get out of sweeping the bakery. That was probably why, But no, all my own family, we were all involved in the business, except I have a sister, Pauline, that's a nun today. She joined the convent a good few years ago, and thank God she's still in it.
Where's she?
She's over in Torquay, in Devon. That's where she is, and she come home every year on holidays. Like, she was in the convent for 7 years before she was allowed home at all, and then they allowed him home, I think it was every 3 to 4 years, but now they come every year.
What age would she have been when she joined the convent?
She always wanted to be a nun, and she wouldn't be taken in the order until she was 16, and she was 16 on a Monday, and she went away with the Verricors, who had their sister was a Reverend Mother, and she brought her away the day after her 16th birthday, and she's still in the convent, and she's 80 now. So, unbelievable. I never regret it.
And was that an order of nuns that were here in Tramore?
Well, the time she joined us, they weren't, but they were. I tell you, they were attached to St. John's College in Waterford. They were the Daughters of the Cross, La Fille de la Croix, being the Daughters of the Cross, and they were originally a French order. But then they started a convent up in Newtown, which was known as Mount Oliver. And they were there for, I'm sure it must have been the bones of 25 years. And then the postulants became fewer and fewer. And they went back to England, where they are today.
And is there many nuns left in that order?
Well, I suppose there would be, I think, in around 35 to 40 left, which there was a few hundreds of them in it years ago. But like everything, they're all dying out too.
If you have anything you want to ask?
The headstone that you said you sharpened, your dad used to sharpen a knife on.
Yes.
Do you know which one it is, or is that a secret, or do we know?
No, well, I wouldn't know. I know it's not very far from the main door. There was an old headstone there, and to the best of my knowledge, it's still there. But my father used to sharpen the knives on the stone. So if you want any knife sharpened now, you know where to go.
Get them dead sharp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so...
I think I'm happy enough if you are.
That it?
I think so. I'm just trying to think. Was there any particular... give me 1 second here. A little scrap of paper with a couple of... And how are we for time? What time do you need to be away at again there, sir?
Sorry?
What time do you need to be away
We
at?
have about 10 more minutes.
Yeah, I need to be going at the latest 10 to 12.
Okay.
The latest.
You mentioned some confectionery that was made, and I didn't recognise the name. What was it?
Confectionery.
Well, bakery products.
Bakery equipment.
Something basket, was it?
A basket loaf. Yeah, a basket loaf. It was like a ness. It was made in a tin. And it was a ness.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
And I know the turnover, they're lovely.
The turnovers, yeah. There's an art in turnovers.
See.
Yes. Turnovers they're generally made in 10 or 12.
Yeah.
And you just get the loaf and they're round and you do, say, 12 of those and you get a knife, a sharp knife. This is where the skill comes in.
Yeah.
And you catch that knife and bring it across the whole 12 of them.
Okay.
That's it. And you have one side is just like this and the other side is bigger.
Yeah.
That's where the turnovers. That's where the skill come in with the turnovers. Now Welch's in Waterford, they do the very same today. They have the skill, you know, by the shape of the... Some people make turnovers and they're too high. They're what we call, they're needed. They need them too much. That's what you call needy. But they need them. There's too much air in them. But when they're smaller, as I say, you catch the knife and you just bring it across. And that's the skill in the turnovers.
And are they made individually and then when they're baked, they join up together?
They're made on a long thing and you can break them.
Yeah.
Now, years ago, the people who come into the shop and they might look for 2 turnovers or even 1. And you can break them. You can break them like that. They break easily, you know. But they're made in 10 or 12 on a tray.
And there was another name you mentioned I didn't recognise at all.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
no.
There's 2 little things, if I could ask.
Sorry?
There's 2 little things, if you're able to give me... It was somebody else mentioned them. I wonder, can you shed me any light? To do with houses in the Arch. I think it was in Tramore Town. They said there was a group of houses in an area called the Arch.
In the Arch, yes. Terry Morrissey lived in the Arch.
That would be...
So have you interviewed Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I remember Terry living there.
What was the arch? What's
The arch, it was just, there was about, there could have been 10 or 12 little houses, small little houses. And you just go in under the archway, which the arch is still down there today. You have the arch shop. That was, and you walk in through that and you go into where a little courtyard and these small little houses were in it.
And where is that now?
It's down the main street.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still there. You know where the art shop is? There. Actually, today, I think where the houses were, McCormick's shop is in it. They took in the back of them. The little houses were all knocked down, and that's part of McCormick's shop today. The yard, McCormick, not the shop, the yard itself. That's part of it. That's where that was.
And the other one was the Gap in Riverstown.
The Gap is still down there today. Now, I wouldn't know a whole lot about that. That's still down there.
What is it even, or?
Again, it's just going into where there's a few houses. It's, let me see now. How would I describe it? The Gap is still down there today anyway. The Powers, which you'll be interviewing, they will tell you about that because they have houses down in the Gap. It was just known as the Gap.
It's just like a little area, like, or?
Oh, well, it was a big area. It's backing onto the where the lake is. You know, where the lake is below.
You remember when the Hydro was down there, would you?
Yes, I remember the Hydro. Jack Lodge owned that. He owned that, and they were sea baths. People used to come to Tramore to go for a bath, and the water used to come in from the sea. They had it piped, I presume, from there, and there was a cafe in part of it as well. But that was well known that people used to come to Tramore to have one of these baths, you know. Maybe they hadn't bats at home. That's probably what it was. Like us all.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Kathleen, thanks a million.
Yeah.
That was great.
Right here.
That was painless enough.
Was it?
It's fabulous. Absolutely
Well, I'll always remember the time anyway with this on me. You know, they'd be saying, Jesus, she had her money under her ear. Well, I haven't. No.